y'all. I know I haven't done a video where I've cooked in a while because I haven't cooked in a while. I've been on vacations and I'm just happy. So I'm making a couple of things after Thanksgiving. You know, you got all them leftovers, so I wanted to make something that made sense so that those leftovers didn't get thrown in the trash. So that was some sweet potatoes there left over. I just kind of smashed them up some. I'm putting in a heaping spoon of flaxseed. Just kind of helps with digestion and also to keep the sweet potato biscuits together. I'm sorry, I didn't say I was making sweet potato biscuits and also vegetarian burgers, kind of like a lazy veggie burger. So anyway, back to the sweet potato biscuits. That is some baking powder. I don't know how much it is, honestly. I'm thinking maybe 2 teaspoons or maybe 1.5 teaspoons, but I really don't know. And I'm going to go ahead and put in some Himalayan salt. Anything that I bake, I generally put in salt. I think it just kind of enhances the flavor in sweet things. So, yeah. And I'm using whole wheat flour. It's not pastry flour. It's just regular whole wheat flour. And I am going to measure it out. I was going to use a spoon, but I decided to kind of be fancy and use a measuring cup. And I believe I'm going to use 2 cups of our whole wheat flour. The good thing was I had more than 2 cups of yams left over. Disregard the trash can because I have been putting a bunch of stuff in there at this point. But I'm going to put 2 cups of whole wheat flour combined with our, I guess, 1.5 to 2 cups of yams. And again, that is not a precise measurement because I just kind of went with just whatever. So we're just going to go ahead and mix that around. Right now, of course, the texture is very inconsistent because the flour is dry. And there's really no moisture in there except for the yams. And if you know anything about traditional sweet potatoes or yams for Thanksgiving or holidays, they're extremely sweet and they're moist. Mine in particular, I make my own syrup and stuff like that. So that is why I didn't add any liquid in there initially to make this dough for these biscuits. The moisture from those sweet potatoes really does get into the flour. Now, what I will say is I recommend you add some cinnamon if you want to have just more of a cinnamon taste. I did not need to add any more sweetness at all. It actually turned out really good, but you're just going to stir the flour around in there really good and kind of like press against the side of the bowl until you kind of see the dough start to get kind of crumbly. And this is where I added that other 1/2 cup. I think it was like 1/2 cup. Yeah. Like another 1/2 cup of the yams in. So that would equal our 2 cups, about 2 cups of yams to our 2 cups of flour. And of course, as you know, flour does spread. It spreads and it spreads a long way. So we didn't really need a whole lot of anything to add to that. But just for a little bit more moisture, I put in that kind of 1/2 cup of the yams and just keep stirring it until it looks relatively incorporated. It's not going to be super sticky, so that's good. You just kind of want to get it to where you can actually handle it in your hands. If you want to use gloves, I prefer gloves. I didn't have it at the time, and it was just for me anyway. So I washed my hands several times. I did share these with people. I washed my hands several times, but as you can see, you just you don't want to overwork it. You just kind of pushing it in and folding it over so that you'll be able to achieve the fluff of a biscuit. And then I'm just going to use my spoon to show you the consistency. Like I said, it is sticky, but not sticking to your hand. And it has a good feel to it. It's not too heavy, not too light. So now we're going to go ahead and roll it out. I'm just putting some more of the whole wheat flour down on some foil because I don't want to mess up my countertop, to be honest. If you have, if you don't care about the countertop or if you have parchment paper, whatever, I just use foil paper because it's not going to mess up my countertop. easy cleanup and all that good stuff. So just rolling it on the rolling pin, and then I'm just going to take kind of like a sheet of the dough as opposed to doing one ball at a time. I figured it would be better. So I'm rolling it around in the flour and then kind of just rolling it out, so that you kind of get, I think I did like a 1/2 inch to an inch. It's really up to you how dense you want them. In hindsight, I probably would have made them just a little bit thinner, and maybe put a little bit more baking powder in there just so they would rise just a little more. I love them, but just from reviews, if you want them to rise a little bit more, put a little bit more baking powder, make them a little thinner. And then I put a little bit of flour on the rim of the glass and just use the glass as a cutter. Now, if you have specific molds you could actually use to cut out the shape of the biscuit, go right ahead and do that. I personally do not, so I use the top of the glass, which works fine for what I was doing. And you're just going to do that literally until you get all of your biscuits cut out. It was actually quite fun. I've made homemade biscuits before and used this method with the glass to cut it out, and they turn out so perfectly round and beautiful. And you can always take the dough that is kind of like the scraps after you've cut out your pieces, mash it together and cut out other biscuits. Like, it's very, very, very interesting, and a really, really good tool. So it kind of makes me feel like a baker, even though I'm better at cooking than I am at baking. So don't judge me for my baking skills here. If you have any suggestions going forward for my baking, please, I will take all of them. But this is just me just rolling out everything and getting it ready to go in the pan and into the oven. And this is when they came out. I just drizzled over some raw agave, raw blue agave over them, kind of like some type of sugar drizzle. Anyway, going over to our veggie burgers. I call them my lazy veggie burgers. I have 1 can. All these beans have been drained and rinsed out. I'm very big on that. I don't know how much it helps or hurts or whatever, but I like to drain out the liquid that's in there. So that was 1 can of chickpea, very nutritious and tasty. So I just blended that down, and then I'm going to take my red beans and also, what else did I put in here? Oh, my red beans and my seasonings. We're going to put the red beans in whole, and I put those in there with just a little bit of the brine that was in there. It does have a good flavor. This is also 1 16-ounce almonds. Then this was just some regular rolled oats. I don't know how much it was, honestly. Just enough to make enough burgers for at least the week. And since it's just me, I'm able to kind of just measure it. But you want to just maybe, let's kind of guesstimate here. Maybe 4 cups of oats will give you about 10 to 15 burgers, depending on how big you make them. Anyway, on to the seasonings, which is one of my favorite parts. As you can see, I'm a little bit of a organizing type of person. I like to have my spices all in one section in a container, so I know what's what. Doing some garlic powder, onion powder, pepper, Himalayan salt, any seasons really that you want. A lazy veggie burger has that flexibility, so you can really put into it whatever you want, however you want it to taste. And again, oatmeal will take on the flavor of whatever you put in it. So you want to season it as if it were your mincemeat or whatever you would use for a burger generally. The seasonings are extremely important. Once you get those seasonings in there, you're going to want to put a little bit of the extra virgin olive oil or whatever kind of lighter oil that you prefer. But I like olive oil, especially in my veggie burgers. And as you can see, I'm not adding any moisture at this moment. Remember, we put in those tomatoes and also some of the brine from the beans.
24 hours later.
And now this should be your consistency. This is the next day or so. It kind of has thick oatmeal consistency at this point. It's still not super thick, which is really, really good, because then, as I usually do, just use a spoon, take a scoop of it, and get it in the pot. You'll see. I wish I had left the sound on for this one, because you'll hear kind of like the creamy consistency of it, and the texture is really, really nice. And as you can see, it'll firm up really, really well. If it is too loose or if it's too dry, you'll notice if it's too loose, it won't be able to hold together like this. And if it's too dry, it will burn really fast, and you will definitely not feel like you're eating a burger. So I'm just putting these burgers into, I was getting ready for work actually. So I'm just putting these in just a small amount of olive oil. If you want to bake them, you can also bake them. They work well that way as well. You want to make a loaf, you can also do that. I personally prefer them in burgers just because it's easier to go, when I'm leaving out the door or what have you. And just fry them like burgers. If you want to cover them, you certainly can. I didn't cover these ones, so I like the darker char on them. It gives it a really good flavor. But you can cover them over and they get nice and golden brown, and they're super, super delicious. Hope you enjoy.